You better buckle up for this one, mate, because I'm telling you, what I'm going to tell you about the moon, which I've got receipts for, is going to blow your mind. You're not going to believe this, man. Honestly, this is crazy. If you thought my Mars video was interesting, hold up. So the huge rabbit hole all starts from when NASA Apollo mission recorded something extremely strange. When they struck the moon with a heavy object, the moon rang like a bell. And that's not the first time. Hold up. So this started all these theories and speculations about whether the moon is actually hollow, whether it's a man-made object if it was brought here by an extraterrestrial civilization. So let's look into it a little bit deeper, right? Now, most scientists believe that due to the moon's dry and rigid structure, it's lacking the same dampening effect like the Earth does, because the Earth has got a liquid core. But for some reason, that explanation just isn't enough. So that's just the first one. That was in 1969 when NASA intentionally crashed the lunar module ascent stage onto the moon, and the moon rang like a bell for almost 1 hour. The second time, they thought, well, okay, this is strange. How about we throw something even heavier onto it? So the second time they did it was in 1971 on the Apollo 13. They fired a Saturn V rocket onto the moon. A lot bigger than the lunar module, okay? This time, the moon rang for 3 hours. Which then reinforced people's ideas that the moon is in fact hollow, or it's made from metal. Now this brings us on to something else which is extremely strange. If you look at the moon, scientists still don't understand why all of the craters, regardless of the size, width, they all have a similar depth. The craters go down to a similar depth. So then that would argue, well, it's hitting something. When an asteroid hits, it's hitting something and it's not penetrating any deeper than a certain depth. Now that's odd.
You cannot always tell just by looking at the terrain what the exact resistance will be as your foot sinks into a point of firm contact. So one must be quite cautious in moving around in this rough terrain.
So is there something underneath the surface of the moon which is stopping anything penetrating inside? And if that wasn't enough for you, in 2019, scientists discovered something absolutely mind-blowing, and they still are trying to work out what this is to this day. A giant, and when I say giant, I mean humongous giant structure, a metallic structure buried beneath the South Pole, located in Atkins Basin. This anomaly is so heavy that it literally pulls the South Basin downwards. Could this be an ancient impact? Could this be a metal core of some sort? Now, something else which also backs up the theory of the moon being hollow is because this is bad, right? The moon is opposite to anything that we've seen regarding the rocks. If you look at Earth, the newest rocks are on the surface due to mountains, cliffs falling and things like that, okay? And beneath that, older rocks, and beneath that, older rocks, okay? That's just common sense. The moon is opposite. On the moon's surface is old rock, and below that is newer rock, and below that is even newer rock. So the further you go down, the newer rock there is. So how is that possible? How is that possible? Now, the only way you can really get that, right, is if you drill down. if you drill down enough and bring up the old rocks to the surface, that's the only way. And we know this because of the rocks that we've got back from the moon. And we've looked at it. Isn't that mind-blowing? Isn't that crazy? Now, can I just remind you that to this day, scientists still don't really know how or why the moon is here. Now, there is one theory of a huge impact on Earth. Basically, a planet the size of Mars, named Theia, collided with Earth, and then the aftermath span and created the moon. But there's a problem with that theory, and it all comes down to isotopic similarities. Now, if in fact the moon was created by a Mars-sized planet called Theia and Earth, you would imagine that that combination of the two would create a moon with a lot more similarities material-wise, especially when it comes to oxygen and isotopes, than it does on Earth. But it doesn't. There are similarities between the materials found on Earth and the moon, but not as much as you would expect. So that theory sort of goes out the window. So how is it? Where's it come from? So then, was the moon placed here? And the question would be, well, why was it placed here? This is where it gets really interesting. I think for a lot of people, we underestimate the need and the impact the moon has on Earth. Without the moon, the Earth would wobble chaotically. And we would have extreme climate shifts. And potentially make life as we know it not exist. So some theorists suggest that the moon was actually placed here strategically to keep the Earth, well, basically able to flourish and exist and have us here like this, okay? Because what I'm about to tell you is a little bit more than just a coincidence. A reason to back up the theory that the moon was placed here is because of this particular perfect coincidence, that the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun and also 400 times closer to the Earth than the sun, which gives a perfect ratio to get a total eclipse. That, to some, is too much of a coincidence. But to scientists, they say it's just a coincidence. But what do you think? Is it just a coincidence? If you think about it, all the billions and billions of stars and planets out there, at some point, you know, you get this perfect situation where life can be created. Or is it more than just a coincidence? So let's just say, for argument's sake, the moon was strategically put here to keep the Earth from wobbling, maybe, to make the Earth and the civilization grow and flourish. But when you have something that can literally be picked up and moved strategically in the perfect place, that suggests that it could be some sort of satellite.
The moon was brought here 12,000 years ago. Our moon is in fact an artificial satellite. It is not a real planet. It can literally leave our orbit underneath its own power. According to the Andromedans, it was brought here from Ursa Minor, from a star system called Chauta that had 21 planets in it. It belonged to the 17th planet and it was one of 4 moons.
Now, 2 Soviet scientists by the name of Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov in 1970 claimed that the moon is not a natural object, but a colossal spacecraft which was placed in orbit by an unknown intelligence. Now, supporters of this theory point to like crazy lunar formations, high concentration of metals such as titanium, and the near damn perfect orbit that the moon moves around in. It's too perfect, they say. So is this just a couple of crazy scientists that just want to, I don't know, make the headlines? You know, is it just taking on one little seed and just running with it? So keeping on to the idea that the moon is there as some sort of satellite, maybe that explains of why we only see one side of the moon. This is what some people are saying. Well, this is something because of a natural gravitational effect called tidal locking. So when the Earth and the moon are gravitationally locked, it refrains from the moon spinning, and this is why we see the moon's face all the time. We've all heard of the idea of the dark side of the moon that we never see, the side of the moon which is always in the dark. Although we see only one side of the moon and we assume that the other side is dark, it's not actually dark all of the time. The dark side of the moon does actually have light. And what's really interesting is what people have discovered on the dark side of the moon. I'm going to show you now photographs and an interview about the dark side of the moon. And now this is crazy. Plus also I'm going to show you some footage of UFO spacecraft going around the moon, moving around the surface, but in fact also going out and in to the moon. This is crazy.
I'll tell you something else Hal told me. Serious as all get out. Was Hal mapped the moon. He wrote many books on the moon.
Okay.
So he mapped the moon. He studied the moon more than anybody in the world. He's the expert on the moon. So we were talking one night out watching the stars, and I'm like, Hal, I said, is there really something on the backside of the moon? He looked at me and he said, there are buildings up there, big ones, and we didn't build them. And they're ancient. So help me, that's what he told me. And I didn't ask any more questions. He wouldn't answer.
Didn't he say the buildings look like mushrooms?
Some of them.
I thought that was really weird.
Some very
Ancient buildings that look like mushrooms on the dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
I have seen so many strange objects while imaging the moon.
Hi guys, just taking a closer look at one of those UFOs that I filmed during a live a few weeks back, and I'm taking a closer look and zooming in, which we'll see in a minute. There appears to be some sort of light or glow emanating from around or the underside of the object, and they also appear to have other objects circling or being ejected from the object, and we'll zoom in so you can have a look at that in a minute. Let's have a closer look at it now. So it's coming across the moon there, and you can see some sort of light emanating from its base. And there also appears to be other objects circling it. We'll zoom in and you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. It appears to be ejected black objects. And there's also a flash. You just caught it there, just at the bottom of it there. And there it goes. And you can also see a small flash, which I think is the light being reflected from the underside of the object, or encircling the object. Maybe it's its propulsion system, God knows. But it's quite fascinating, and let us know your thoughts on that. And also, as it passes from the darkness of space, I've slowed it down there so you can see it a bit better there. There you go. I can spot two black objects there. And there's one trailing, a very small one trailing at the back of it, or looks like possibly being ejected from it or accompanying it, and you've got the flash there as well. So there you can see little small black objects, and as I reverse it, so you can get a better look, you'll see a small flash. Thought I'll play around with the light balance, hoping to see the object before it passes the moon, and as you can see, we can detect the moonlight emanating around the moon, represented by the light blue or pale pixels. So we should be able to see the black object pass through them or disturb them, but we don't. And this suggests to me that the object came forward or in from the back of the moon, maybe suggested from that purple pixelation that we see there as it enters.
If you just look here at this crater, this obvious UFO just kind of pops out of it and then floats over the surface of the moon. It casts a shadow and everything. So what I've done is I've zoomed in and I've tinkered with the colors to try to bring out this object, to make it look a little bit more clear so we can kind of decide on what it could be. To me, it's a UFO. To me, it's a UFO flying out of a crater on the moon. Pretty clear. But I'm sure there's going to be people who are saying this is somehow CGI, or somehow AI has created this, which is why I'm trying to play with the colors so you can see the way it just pops out of the landscape. It's an obvious shape, possibly a tic-tac shape, and you can see almost an energy that goes around it that the camera picked up on. And there it is. What do you think of this UFO flying out of a crater on the moon?
So a civilization on the moon? An actual fleet? The moon is a mothership? Could this actually be real, mate? Could this actually be real? But let's talk about a theory which is really quite out there, but in fact has actually got some evidence to back this theory up. That the moon is actually a hologram, or a hologram is in front of the moon, stopping us seeing what's really behind there. Because in 2014, a YouTuber by the name of Crow777 captured something on the moon. It was a ripple effect going over the moon. Now, many people have still captured that. It's not just him. A lot of people have captured this ripple over the moon.
So I'm filming one night looking for objects. I pan my camera down and the wave starts, this hologram wave. I don't notice it. And then it catches up to the camera and I do notice it. I glance at the moon, but when you're staring at things, you know, you don't know whether it's your eyes or what. And then I notice a second wave coming. And at this point, I'm thinking it's my camera. I look up at the moon again and, you know, I just don't know what to think. I saved the clip out. I don't delete it. I almost did. And I look at it for quite some time, weeks maybe, looking at it over and over, and I'm realizing that, you know, this is not the way a digital camera malfunctions. This is an organic line, no pixelation, no shredding of the signal. And it finally dawns on me that the pan of the camera proves it. When I pan down, and I usually don't shoot this way, I usually stay centered, almost always stay centered, trying to increase my odds of catching something unusual. But when I pan down, the wave starts, and I pan in front of the wave, which catches up to the camera. And that is the proof in the pudding.
Here is the original video with original audio for one of my TikTok lives where I managed to capture the lunar wave. Hope you enjoy this and put your comments in the boxes. Let's have a bash down here. Earth commentators. Some interesting features down here. I don't know if you watch Bruce sees all. He sees a lot down this. I think this is his favourite part of the moon down here. And I know why, because when you look at craters like that, it gets you wondering, doesn't it? You know what I mean? When you see structures like that in craters, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Let me see if I can pull out any detail on this. Hold on. Hold on. I'll darken it up so you can get many more detail out of it. I mean, look at that. That's friggin' awesome, that, isn't it? What's caused that? It's caused them tracks on there. Another crack in the moon. There's two. I mean, I've seen shots of this from El Rock, and you can actually see two tracks near that crater. They see the crater on the rim. I can just manage to pick them up from my back garden, so I'm quite pleased with that. So I'm getting some good. Let me just get back out a little bit. See if we can pull some more. Thank you, Jerry, for that. A road, possibly. What a problem. I bet you find life, mate. Fucking hope so. I do, you know, there's plenty of water up there now. Now I've learnt that you see the wave? There's the wave. Look at that wave. Okay, now I've caught the moon wave. You seen that, guys? Shit. Was that the moon wave that everyone talks about?
Now, a lot of people are saying that this is because of the hologram. The moon is actually a hologram, or there is a hologram covering something else behind it. However, scientists just say, look, this is a heat distortion, a mirage, or a technical glitch with the telescope that you're using. There's also some other strange things on the moon that you might want to know about. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do a follow-up, because what I know also of what's been seen on the moon, again, will blow your mind. So what do you reckon, mate? Is it an artificial thing that's been brought here to keep us stabilized, to keep us living, to keep the world flourishing? Is it hollow? Why is the craters only a certain depth? You tell me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked it. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Oh, by the way, if you are interested in the Mars one, it'll be here. I'll put the... No, it'll be here. No, here. That's it. The Mars one's here. Okay? Or you can watch that one. Do this one. Take care. Bye-bye.